One slap, one silence, one career destroyed. The sharp crack of Officer Derek Williams' hand against Maya Johnson's cheek shattered the calm of Riverside Park. What had been a peaceful afternoon filled with children's laughter turned in a single second into a scene of chaos and disbelief. Parents froze in place, some gasping, others fumbling for their phones. Children screamed. A basketball rolled across the pavement, forgotten. The only sound louder than the echo of that slap was Zara's terrified sob as she abandoned the swing set and bolted toward her mother. Maya didn't stumble. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. Slowly, with the composure of someone who had spent 12 years learning to control her every reaction, she lifted her hand to her cheek. Her fingers brushed the red imprint burning against her skin. Then she looked directly at Williams, her gaze cold, unwavering, and far too calm for what had just happened. "Officer Derek Williams," she said, her voice steady, carrying across the playground with deliberate clarity. "Badge number 4127. Every parent within earshot stiffened. They knew the tone of someone who was no ordinary bystander. Williams sneered, mistaking her composure for submission. He didn't realize he had just crossed a line that would end his career and expose years of abuse buried beneath bureaucratic silence. Because Maya Johnson wasn't just a black mother spending the afternoon at the park. She was Special Agent Maya Johnson, 12 years with the FBI Civil Rights Division, undercover for 3 weeks documenting his harassment of minority families. And now she had everything she needed. Only 3 hours earlier, Maya had been sitting at her modest apartment's kitchen table, her daughter's soccer cleats tossed carelessly on the floor as she sifted through weeks of surveillance notes. Her phone buzzed. A message from Deputy Director Sarah Anderson. Status update on surveillance operation. Maya typed back without hesitation. Pattern confirmed. Multiple constitutional violations documented. Recommend continuing current position for additional evidence collection. The reply came instantly. Understood. Maintain cover at all costs. We need ironclad documentation before proceeding. Those words echoed in her head now as she stood before the officer who had just laid hands on her. Maintain cover, blend into the community, observe, document. But this wasn't just documentation anymore. This was personal. Maya's cover had been simple. A single mother with a flexible government job, spending afternoons with her daughter at Riverside Park. Perfectly ordinary, invisible. Except her phone wasn't just for scrolling while Zara played. Hidden inside was a federal-grade surveillance device, recording every word, every tone, every threat, every slap. For 3 weeks she had sat on that same weathered park bench, watching her daughter swing and climb, while her camera lens captured scene after scene of Derek Williams harassing Black and Latino families. The Rodriguez family told their grandson didn't belong on the big kid equipment. The Hernandez kids ordered off the soccer field for disrupting community peace. Jerome Johnson and his 10-year-old son Marcus forced to produce identification while shooting hoops alone. 17 incidents in total, each one documented with precision, each one showing the same pattern. Officer Williams targeting families of color with manufactured complaints, escalating until they left in humiliation or fear. Local complaints had gone nowhere. 47 reports filed in 3 years, all dismissed, all labeled unfounded, all buried in bureaucratic black holes. That was why the Department of Justice had stepped in. When local systems failed, federal oversight became necessary. And that was why Maya had been sent, to live among the families suffering in silence and build a case too strong to ignore. But now the case had taken a violent turn. The slap wasn't just assault, it was the escalation her training had warned her about. Men like Williams didn't start with violence. They tested boundaries with intimidation, threats, humiliation. And when no one stopped them, when institutions protected them, they escalated. Today, Williams had gone too far, and he had chosen the wrong woman to strike. Zara clung to her mother's waist, sobbing, her small fingers digging into Maya's coat. "Mama, why did he hit you? Why did the policeman hurt you?" Maya bent, pressing her lips to her daughter's forehead, all while keeping her eyes locked on Williams. Her voice was calm, measured, but filled with steel. Because he thought he could, but he won't get away with it. Around them, the playground was no longer a place of play. It was a courtroom of witnesses. Phones were raised high, recording from every angle. A jogger, Dr. Jennifer Martinez, had already stopped mid-stride, phone in hand, narrating what she was seeing. "This is assault. This is a uniformed officer assaulting a mother in broad daylight." Mrs. Carter, walking from her corner bodega, whispered into her own recording, "Oh my God. He actually hit her." Their footage, combined with Maya's federal recordings, would soon ignite social media like wildfire. But Williams didn't see that. He only saw a woman he thought he had silenced. He laughed, bitter and mocking. "Assault? That was barely a love tap. You want to see real police work?" His voice boomed, meant to intimidate. Instead, it exposed him further. Maya straightened, her hand still gently cradling Zara, and addressed William's partner, Officer Maria Rodriguez, who stood frozen near the patrol car, radio slack in her hand. "Officer Rodriguez," Maya called out, her voice deliberate, precise, unmistakably authoritative. "This entire incident has been recorded, witnessed, documented, and it will be reported through the appropriate federal channels." Rodriguez's blood ran cold. That language wasn't casual. It wasn't the empty threat of a civilian. It was the precise diction of law enforcement. She knew it, though Williams was too arrogant to see it. "Derek, we need to leave." Now her voice cracked with panic, but Williams brushed her off with a sneer. "Report it to whoever you want. Nobody cares what people like you have to say." What he didn't realize was that the woman before him wasn't just another civilian mother. She was the federal agent who had been building a case against him for weeks. And now, with a single slap, he had given her the evidence that guaranteed not only his downfall, but the exposure of an entire system that had allowed him to operate unchecked. The park was silent. Witnesses frozen. Phones recording. Maya holding her daughter, her cheek burning but her voice unbroken. This was no longer surveillance. This was justice in motion. 3 hours earlier. A quiet kitchen, a storm preparing. Before the chaos of Riverside Park, before the slap that silenced an entire playground, Maya Johnson had been at her small apartment table, papers spread out like puzzle pieces only she could arrange. Zara was humming to herself in the background, tying her soccer cleats with clumsy determination, her excitement for the park glowing in her innocent eyes. But Maya's mind wasn't on soccer. It was on the patterns she had been tracking for 3 relentless weeks. On the screen before her were photographs. Officer Derek Williams confronting families at the park, his posture always aggressive, his words dripping with disdain. Audio clips catalogued threats spoken under the guise of police authority. and neatly typed notes documented 17 separate instances of selective enforcement. These weren't coincidences. These were deliberate acts of intimidation, each one targeting Black and Latino families who had every right to occupy public space. Her phone buzzed. A text from Deputy Director Sarah Anderson. Status update on surveillance operation. Maya typed quickly. Pattern confirmed. Multiple constitutional violations documented. Recommend continuing current position for additional evidence collection. The response came instantly. Understood. Maintain cover at all costs. We need ironclad documentation before proceeding. Maya set the phone down, rubbing her temple. Maintain cover. That was the rule. Do not break cover no matter what. Her role was to observe, to document, to build a case so airtight that even the most stubborn courts couldn't dismiss it. But Maya knew what Anderson also knew. This case was already dangerous. The complaints against Williams weren't just noise, they were a chorus of pain. 47 families had tried, 47 reports filed, and every single one had disappeared into what Maya called administrative black holes. Each time a complaint was filed, the process would drag until the family gave up, or the case was marked as unfounded. No consequences, no discipline, no accountability. That was why she was here. The Department of Justice couldn't look away any longer. Someone had to embed in the very community Williams terrorized, someone trained to see what local oversight refused to admit. And that someone was Maya Johnson. She had chosen her cover carefully. A single mother, government employee with flexible hours, a daughter who loved the park. Perfectly ordinary, perfectly believable, the kind of story that no one questioned. Yet every trip to the park was double-layered. Quality time with Zara, yes, but also surveillance. The bench she sat on had the perfect vantage point, the swings, the basketball court, the soccer field. Her equipment captured everything, voices, faces, the subtle hostility that so many dismissed as misunderstandings. Her daughter, though, was noticing. "Mama," Zara asked softly as she tied her shoes, "why does that policeman always look angry when he sees us?" Maya paused. How do you explain systemic discrimination to an 8-year-old without shattering her trust in the world? She crouched down, brushed a curl from her daughter's forehead, and said, "Sometimes people have bad days, baby. Our job is to stay safe and be respectful." But Zara was sharp. "He doesn't look angry at the white families." The words stung more than Maya wanted to admit. Even children could see what adults pretended wasn't there. And Maya, with her training, knew this wasn't about bad days. This was about a policy, not one written in any handbook, but practiced out loud in public spaces every single day. She made a note in her file: child observation, pattern visible to minors, evidence of systemic bias. Her assignment had seemed straightforward at first. Blend into the neighborhood, document Williams' interactions, collect evidence. But a secure call from Anderson yesterday had shifted the ground beneath her. "Agent Johnson," Anderson said, her voice low and firm. "New intelligence suggests Officer Williams may be escalating. We've had tips about possible physical confrontations. Be cautious." Maya leaned back in her chair, scanning her files. "Mom, based on my observations, his escalation pattern fits. Verbal intimidation, manufactured reports, psychological pressure. Physical violence is the next logical step. And how close are you to having enough for charges?" 3 weeks of surveillance, multiple families, clear violations. "We could move now." But if he escalates, we'll have the kind of evidence that guarantees conviction. The silence on the line was heavy. Then Anderson spoke. It's your call. But if you continue, you're stepping into dangerous territory. Men like Williams are volatile when they feel untouchable. Maya knew it was true. But she also knew something else. If Williams was going to cross the line, better that she, trained, prepared, recording, be there when it happened. Better her than another family with no protection. Now, hours later, as she walked with Zara toward Riverside Park, she felt the weight of that decision pressing on her chest. The park looked the same: green grass, sunlight glinting off swings, children racing across the field. But Maya's eyes weren't on the beauty. They were scanning for the man she had come to watch. And sure enough, he was there, patrol car at the edge, posture rigid, eyes scanning the playground like he owned it. Williams didn't know what was coming. He didn't know that the single mother sitting quietly on the bench had already built a case strong enough to bury his career. He didn't know that the files sitting in Maya's apartment were waiting for a federal prosecutor who would see not isolated incidents but systematic violations. He didn't know that his every word, his every threat, his every slap was being documented with the precision of a federal operation. And he didn't know that the moment he laid his hand on Maya Johnson, the entire story would explode into something no one in Chicago could ignore. Because justice, Maya thought as she pulled Zara close, doesn't come quietly. Sometimes it comes with one slap that wakes an entire nation. Escalation always starts small, until it doesn't. Maya had studied that truth for 12 years in the Civil Rights Division. Discrimination rarely announced itself with neon signs. It started in whispers, in subtle shifts, in a tone that hardened only for certain people. But Derek Williams was past whispers now. His pattern was escalating, and Maya was positioned to watch him unravel in real time. It was a Tuesday afternoon when Mrs. Rodriguez arrived with her grandson Miguel, the little boy who loved the climbing structure. Maya was already on her bench, notebook balanced on her knee, phone camera subtly angled. The park was quiet, children scattered across the swings and slides. Then, as if scripted, Williams appeared. His patrol car rolled to a stop, door slamming with practiced authority. "Ma'am," he barked, striding toward Mrs. Rodriguez. "We've had supervision complaints about this area." Maya's stomach tightened. She'd seen this opening before, vague, accusatory, impossible to disprove. Mrs. Rodriguez looked up from her knitting, confusion knitting her brow. Supervision complaints? I'm right here watching my grandson. William's gaze fixed on Miguel, who was carefully navigating the climbing structure, hands gripping, feet planted, cautious, precise, not reckless. That equipment is for older children. He could cause safety problems for others. Maya's pen moved quickly across the page. Target: Latino child, age 8. Claim: inappropriate use of equipment. Observation: false. Equipment is age appropriate. Mrs. Rodriguez's voice trembled. He's fine. He's careful. There's no danger. Williams stepped closer, voice dropping to a threat. The families here shouldn't have to worry about safety problems. It was the kind of sentence Maya had seen hundreds of times in reports, concern for community safety, but beneath the words was the real message. Your family doesn't belong here. Mrs. Rodriguez gathered Miguel's backpack. The little boy's face fell as he climbed down. Abuela, why can't I finish playing? Her reply was quiet, but Maya heard it. Sometimes, mijo, we have to choose our battles. Maya's jaw clenched. She wanted to scream that it wasn't a battle they should have to fight, but she stayed silent, documenting every second, because she knew this evidence would matter more than her anger. Her notes were precise. No safety violations, no complaints from others. Officer unable to provide examples. Result, family forced to leave. Witness statement, resignation. That was escalation number 1. The officer wasn't just policing rules, he was policing belonging. A week later came escalation number 2, and it was worse. The Hernandez family had made Riverside Park their Saturday tradition. Soccer on the field, picnic blankets spread nearby, laughter filling the air. Maya had always enjoyed documenting them, the way Carlos cheered for his kids, the way Maria clapped when they scored goals, the normalcy of a family refusing to be small. But normalcy had a target painted on its back. Williams arrived just as the game was in full swing. "Sir," he called out, approaching Carlos with that same heavy stride, "we've had noise complaints. Your children are disrupting the community atmosphere." Carlos blinked in disbelief. "Noise complaints? Officer, this is the soccer field. They're playing soccer on the field designated for soccer." Williams's eyes narrowed. "Sir, I need you to control your children. Or I'll have to relocate you to more appropriate facilities." Maya's pen flew. Noise complaint fabricated. Nearest family is 50+ yards away. White children nearby louder. Selective enforcement documented. Carlos's voice rose. "Appropriate facilities. This is the facility. The rules are posted right there." Williams leaned in, lowering his voice but raising the threat. "Control your children, or I'll write citations. Or maybe call Child Protective Services. Up to you." Maya's pulse spiked. The tactic was textbook, weaponizing bureaucracy, threatening consequences designed to terrify parents. Maria's face crumpled with fear. Carlos looked at his children, then back at Williams, and she saw the decision break him. They packed the blanket, they gathered the ball, and they left. The children's eyes searched for answers as they walked away. "Why can't we stay, Papi? We didn't do anything wrong." Carlos's reply was choked. "I know, mijo, I know." Maya's file grew heavier. Pattern repeated. Family forced to leave. Children aware of injustice. Witnesses present. Officers' language coded but discriminatory. The third escalation nearly made Maya break her cover. It was Jerome Johnson and his son Marcus, their Sunday basketball ritual as steady as church. Maya positioned herself with clear sightlines, camera rolling. She watched Marcus dribble, shoot, rebound. She watched Jerome sit on the bench, smiling at his boy. Then she watched Williams step into their moment like a shadow swallowing light. "We've had reports of unsupervised children," Williams said. Jerome frowned, gesturing to himself. "Reports? I'm right here. I'm his father." "Children need appropriate adult supervision," Williams pressed. "I'll need to see ID, verify your relationship to the child." Maya's pen cut into the page. Constitutional violation. No reasonable suspicion. Demanding ID without cause. Targeting black father-son bond. Jerome stood slowly, his voice steady but sharp. "You want me to prove I'm this boy's father because we're black? Because I guarantee you don't ask white dads to pull out their wallets while their kids play." Williams's jaw tightened, but he didn't back down. He scribbled something on his pad, muttering about incident reports. Marcus clutched the basketball, staring at his father with wide, confused eyes. "Daddy, Why does he think you're not my dad? Jerome knelt, hand on his son's shoulder. Because some people think they can take away what's obvious. But nobody can take you from me. Maya felt her throat tighten. Her pen shook. This was more than data. This was trauma being engraved in a child's memory. Her notes read like a prosecutor's opening statement. Officer manufactured cause. Demanded ID humiliation documented. Child questioned parental relationship. Witnesses nearby. By the time Maya returned to her apartment that night, her file had grown into something undeniable. 17 families, 17 moments of humiliation, 17 echoes of a system that claimed blindness but practiced exclusion. And still she knew. This wasn't the end. It was only the middle. Williams was testing boundaries, escalating step by step, building toward the inevitable. Her training screamed the warning. Physical confrontation was coming. What Williams didn't realize was that Maya wasn't just watching anymore. She was waiting. Waiting for the moment he crossed the final line, the moment he mistook her silence for weakness, the moment he laid a hand on her and revealed himself for what he truly was. That slap was coming. And when it did, it wouldn't just be violence. It would be evidence. Evidence that would tear through Chicago like wildfire. Threats are louder when spoken in daylight. By the third week of surveillance, Derek Williams no longer pretended his intimidation was subtle. His tone, his posture, even the timing of his patrols carried the weight of someone who believed he was untouchable. And the Washington family, new to the neighborhood, unaware of the history, became his next target. It was a bright Saturday morning. Parents filled picnic tables, children ran across the soccer field, laughter rose into the clear air. For once, the park felt alive. Maya sat in her usual spot on the bench, notebook open, phone angled just enough to capture everything. Zara was swinging high, legs kicking at the sky, her laughter blending with the others. For a fleeting moment, it almost felt normal. Then the patrol car rolled up. Doors slammed. The atmosphere shifted like a sudden drop in temperature. Conversations hushed. Parents' eyes flickered toward Williams, then quickly away. Everyone had learned what his presence meant. Michael and Lisa Washington hadn't. They had only recently moved into the South Side, their twin daughters eager to test the climbing structure for the first time. The girls laughed, encouraging each other as they scrambled upward, their voices carrying across the park. To Maya, it was the sound of children being children. To Williams, it was opportunity. He approached with that deliberate stride, shoulders squared, voice pitched just loud enough to command the entire playground's attention. "Sir, ma'am, I need to discuss some concerns about facility usage in this area." Michael turned, polite and cautious. He was an accountant by trade, a man used to measured words and calm negotiations. "Of course, officer. What seems to be the problem?" Williams gestured toward the climbing structure where the twins were giggling. "Your children are using the equipment in ways that create liability issues for other families. We need them to modify their play behavior or relocate to more appropriate areas." Maya's pen scratched furiously. Claim, liability. Observation, false. Children using equipment correctly. Discrimination masked as authority. Lisa frowned, scanning the playground. Liability issues? They're climbing the bars like everyone else. That's what the equipment is for. Williams's jaw tightened. He stepped closer, his shadow falling across them. "Ma'am, I'm giving you a lawful instruction. Compliance is expected. Continued non-compliance can result in citations, Child Protective Services involvement, or other enforcement actions. The words rang out like a gunshot. Parents nearby stiffened. Maya's pulse quickened. This wasn't just intimidation. This was an outright threat. CPS involvement, the nuclear option, the fear that gripped every parent in the community. Michael held his ground, though his voice wavered. "Officer, could you explain what specific behaviors you're concerned about?" "They're following the posted rules." William's eyes narrowed into slits. His voice dropped, each word deliberate. "Sir, when a police officer provides instruction about public safety, the appropriate response is compliance, not questioning." Maya underlined the word in her notes. Non-compliance equals criminalization of questioning authority. Constitutional violation. The twins paused on the bars, sensing the tension. One of them whispered to her sister, "Are we in trouble?" Lisa rushed to reassure them. "No, baby. You're fine. Keep playing." But her eyes told another story. Fear, anger, helplessness. Williams wasn't finished. He leaned even closer, his voice low enough for Maya's recorder, but loud enough for the Washingtons to hear every syllable. "You people need to understand. When I give an order, it's for a reason. Failure to comply can have consequences you won't like." Maya's pen pressed so hard against the paper it nearly tore. Explicit, discriminatory language. "You people. Threat escalation confirmed. Evidence, audio captured, witnesses present." The Washingtons gathered their daughters, ending what should have been a carefree morning. Lisa's hands shook as she packed their bag, her voice cracking as she whispered, "Come on, girls. We're leaving." The twins looked back at the bars, confusion etched into their small faces. "But we weren't doing anything wrong." Maya's stomach churned. She wanted to rise, to intervene, to tell the Washingtons they weren't alone. But she stayed seated, camera still rolling, heart still pounding. Her job was to capture, to bear witness, to make sure this family's humiliation would not vanish into silence. As the Washingtons walked away, Williams straightened his posture, surveying the playground like a king who had reasserted control. But he didn't notice the woman on the bench, the mother with the calm face and sharp eyes, writing everything down, storing every word, every threat, every moment that would one day be played back in a federal courtroom. Maya exhaled slowly, her pen tapping against the notebook. Williams had crossed a threshold. The intimidation wasn't vague anymore. It was direct, documented, and deliberate. The escalation pattern was undeniable, from manufactured complaints to verbal threats to looming violence. Anderson's warning replayed in her mind. If he escalates to physical assault, you'll have the kind of evidence that guarantees conviction, but you'll also be at risk. Maya knew the risk. She could feel it every time William's shadow darkened her bench, every time Zara's laughter faltered when he entered the park. She knew he was building toward something more, something he thought would cement his control forever. But what Williams didn't understand was that Maya was building too. Every note, every video, every threat carefully catalogued. She wasn't just documenting his misconduct. She was preparing the case that would strip away his badge, his authority, his arrogance. And when the escalation finally broke into violence, she would be ready. One slap can silence a playground. It happened faster than anyone expected. One moment, Riverside Park was alive with laughter, swings creaking under children's joy, parents chatting under the afternoon sun. The next, every sound was ripped away, replaced by the echo of a single hand striking flesh. Officer Derek Williams had crossed the final line. Maya Johnson felt the sting spread across her cheek, heat blooming under her skin. For a fraction of a second, she tasted metal, shock threatening to swallow her. But training steadied her. She forced her breathing slow, fingers brushing the mark with unnatural calm. Around her, the park dissolved into chaos. Children screamed, parents gasped, phones whipped into the air, lenses already capturing what had just unfolded. Zara's voice cut through the noise, high-pitched and trembling. "Mama." She dropped from the swing, sprinting across the wood chips, tears streaking down her face. But Maya didn't break. She couldn't. Instead, she turned deliberately toward Williams, her eyes narrowing on the badge gleaming on his chest. "Officer Derek Williams, badge number 4127, she said, her voice carrying across the playground like a gavel striking wood. "You just committed assault and battery in uniform, in front of multiple witnesses." The silence that followed was thick, heavy, suffocating. Every parent, every child, every stranger within earshot now understood. This wasn't just a tense encounter. This was a crime unfolding in real time. Williams sneered, adrenaline sparking in his eyes. "Assault?" He laughed harshly, the sound making two toddlers cry. "Lady, that was barely a love tap. You want to see real police work? I can show you what that looks like." Maya's calm deepened, every word sharpened by years of federal discipline. "What you just did will be reviewed in federal court. What you just said will be played back to federal prosecutors. And what you think is intimidation is already evidence." Williams bristled, mistaking her composure for weakness. But Rodriguez, his partner hovering near the patrol car, saw it for what it was. Her eyes widened, panic breaking through her rigid posture. "Derek," she hissed, hand frozen over her radio. "We need to go. Now." But Williams ignored her. He stepped closer, towering over Maya, spitting venom with every word. "Report it to whoever you want. Nobody cares what people like you have to say." The phrase "people like you" rippled across the playground. Parents gasped, phones kept recording. And still Maya stood unflinching, one arm wrapped protectively around Zara, her other hand calmly pointing towards the cameras now trained on Williams. "People like me?" she repeated, her voice steady, deliberate, slicing through his bluster. "You'll regret those words. Because I am not just a mother at this park. I am a federal agent, and you just provided the evidence the Department of Justice has been waiting for." The color drained from Rodriguez's face. Williams's smirk faltered, but Maya didn't wait for him to process it. She kept speaking, her words rolling like an indictment. 3 weeks I've documented you. 17 families intimidated. Children humiliated, parents threatened, all of it recorded. And now this." She lifted her phone, its red recording light glowing like an unblinking eye. "Assault, caught from every angle, badge number clear, audio perfect, witnesses everywhere. Your career ends today." Around her, witnesses began murmuring. "She's an agent," one father whispered, his phone still raised. "Oh my God, he hit a federal agent." Mrs. Carter, owner of the corner bodega, pushed closer, her phone trembling as she shouted, "I got the whole thing." He slapped her. "I recorded everything." A jogger, later identified as Dr. Jennifer Martinez, an ER physician, spoke loudly into her phone camera. "This is assault. This is abuse of power. And this is going to court." Zara clung to her mother, sobbing. "Mama, why did he hurt you?" Why did the policeman hit you?" Maya held her tight, kissing the top of her head, her own voice calm even as rage burned beneath. "Because he thought he could. But he can't. Not anymore." Williams tried to retake control, but the moment had already slipped from his hands. The air had shifted. The authority he had wielded like a weapon now hung shattered at his feet. Every parent who had once left the park in silence was now standing firm, cameras pointed, voices rising. "Assault!" someone shouted. "Badge 4127, we saw it," another cried. "Justice for Maya," echoed from the crowd, the chant growing, fueled by raw anger. Maya felt the tide turning. For 3 weeks she had documented fear, families leaving quietly, afraid of escalation. But now, with her cheek stinging red and cameras rolling, that fear was cracking. The community was finding its voice. Williams glanced at Rodriguez, panic flashing. "Do something," he barked. But she shook her head, her voice flat, hollow. "Derek, you've already done enough." Maya stepped forward, holding Zara with one arm, her phone steady in the other. "This park is no longer yours to terrorize. You've humiliated children, silenced parents, and buried complaints. But today, Derek Williams, you made your mistake in the open, and now the whole world will see it." Her words weren't just for him. They were for every phone recording, every social media user who would press upload within minutes, every family who had been told their complaints didn't matter. And indeed, within hours, the videos would flood Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram. Mrs. Carter's clip would show the slap itself, clear, brutal, undeniable. Dr. Martinez's angle would capture Zara's horrified reaction, a child crying in her mother's arms. And park security footage would add the wide shot, the context of William's escalation from words to violence. Together, the evidence would spread like fire. Together, they would transform a single slap into a federal case. But in that moment, in the stillness after chaos, Maya simply stood tall, eyes locked on the man who thought he could break her. "I've got your badge number, your face, your words, and your violence. And soon I'll have your career." One video can topple silence. By nightfall, the slap at Riverside Park was no longer just a neighborhood scandal. It had become a nationwide storm. What began as shaky phone footage in the trembling hands of Mrs. Carter turned into a tidal wave of outrage sweeping across every platform. Her clip was the first to hit Facebook. The caption was simple, raw, impossible to ignore. "This just happened at Riverside Park. A police officer slapped a mother in front of her child. Everyone needs to see this." The video showed everything: Williams's sneer, his hand arcing through the air, the crack of impact, the red bloom across Maya's cheek. Within an hour, it had 10,000 shares. By midnight, it was closing in on 1 million views. On Twitter, Dr. Jennifer Martinez uploaded her own footage. From her jogging path, she had captured the aftermath. Zara's piercing cry, "Mama, why did he hit you?" as Maya clutched her, whispering calm words through the fire on her cheek. Dr. Martinez's tweet read, "I'm an ER doctor. I've seen trauma." This woman's composure wasn't shock. It was training. Something tells me Officer Williams just made the worst mistake of his career. #Justice for Maya. The tweet detonated. Retweets spiraled, comments poured in. Lawyers, activists, teachers, mothers, all of them united in rage. Within hours, #Justice for Maya was trending #1 in Chicago, then nationwide. And then came the knockout punch. The wide-angle security camera footage from the park surfaced, leaked by an anonymous city employee who could no longer stomach silence. It showed everything in context. William's approach, his escalating threats, Maya's calm identification of his badge number, and finally the slap heard around the world. 3 angles, 3 witnesses, 1 undeniable truth. Instagram lit up with reels dissecting every frame. TikTok exploded with side-by-side breakdowns. Creators added captions like, "This is why we say systemic, not isolated, and imagine being a child and watching this happen to your mom." Within 12 hours, teenagers across the country were reposting Zara's terrified face, turning a local tragedy into a generational rallying cry. Maya sat in her apartment, cheek still tender, watching it all unfold on her laptop. Zara was asleep in the next room, curled under a blanket, her small body finally at rest after hours of sobbing. Maya scrolled through comments that poured beneath each video. Some were angry, some were heartbroken, some were chilling in their precision. 47 complaints, and this is the first time anyone cared. That's not oversight, that's cover-up. This wasn't about safety. This was about race. And now the proof is out. Every family who left that park deserves justice too. The voices she had been documenting for 3 weeks, voices buried in bureaucratic dead ends, were finally loud enough to shatter walls. By evening, national outlets had picked up the story. CNN ran Mrs. Carter's footage under the headline, "Officer slaps mother in Chicago Park, federal investigation likely." Legal experts spoke in clipped tones, citing Section 242 of Title 18 of the United States Code, the federal statute criminalizing willful violation of constitutional rights under color of law. One analyst said bluntly, "This officer could face up to 8 years in federal prison." On MSNBC, Rachel Maddow's team had already tracked down the complaints against Williams. Her segment opened with the viral video, then widened to the bigger picture. "This isn't just one slap," she said, voice steady with fury. "This is 47 complaints buried by the department. This is a system that protected him instead of the families he terrorized." Meanwhile, Fox News tried a different spin, calling it an unfortunate, isolated incident, while interviewing local residents. But even their chosen voices faltered when confronted with the viral footage. One parent said flatly on live television, "I saw him target families of color over and over. This wasn't isolated. This was a pattern." Back on the streets of Chicago, the community was no longer quiet. The Facebook group, Riverside Park Families, ballooned overnight as parents uploaded their own evidence. Audio clips of William's threats, snapshots of his patrol car lurking near playgrounds, copies of complaints stamped resolved with no action taken. Maria Santos posted a timeline of encounters. March 15th. He told my son he was too aggressive for the playground. March 29th. He questioned whether I was supervising my kids properly. April 12th. He threatened CPS when I asked for his supervisor's name. Her post ended with the words, "We stopped going to the park." But we never should have had to. The group's stories stacked into a damning archive of silence. Every parent's testimony added another brick to the wall closing in on Williams. Social media turned the once dismissed complaints into undeniable proof of systemic failure. Angela Washington, a reporter for the Chicago Tribune, connected the dots in a searing exposé published that same night. Her headline cut like glass. "Officer with 47 complaints escalates to violence. CPD failed to act." The article listed family after family, complaint after complaint, each one buried in administrative review. And then it laid out the truth. Derek Williams had not been punished once. By the time midnight rolled around, the national conversation had shifted. This wasn't just about one officer. It was about every system that had allowed him to thrive unchecked. At the FBI's Chicago field office, Anderson leaned back from her monitor, watching the feeds. "Well, Agent Johnson," she said into the secure phone, "your cover's blown. But your case, it's ironclad." Anderson wasn't exaggerating. Between Maya's 3 weeks of surveillance and the viral flood of community testimony, the evidence was now overwhelming. What had been whispers in ignored reports was now a roar shaking the city. Back in the apartment, Maya closed her laptop, the glow of the screen fading as exhaustion pressed down on her. She stroked Zara's hair as the child stirred in sleep. "It's almost over, baby," she whispered. "What he tried to hide, the world can see now." But Maya also knew something else. Viral outrage was powerful, yes, but it could burn out fast. If justice was going to be more than hashtags, the next steps had to be meticulous, legal, federal, unstoppable. And she was ready. Every lie collapses when the truth walks in. At 7:47 a.m., Commander Patricia Hayes was sipping her first cup of coffee in her office at CPD headquarters, skimming the weekend reports glowing across her monitor. To her, it was supposed to be another Monday morning of sanitized paperwork and cautious approvals. She flipped through Officer Derek Williams's report on the park incident, noting the neat phrasing, "Civilian non-compliant verbal redirection necessary. Incident resolved." No mention of a slap. No mention of witnesses. No mention of chaos. Just another entry in the endless parade of reports that slid across her desk. Then her phone rang. "Commander Hayes," she answered briskly.
The voice on the other end was sharp, authoritative, and immediately recognizable. "This is Deputy Director Sarah Anderson, FBI Chicago Field Office. We need to discuss the Riverside Park incident from yesterday." Hayes straightened, pulse quickening. "FBI? Over a minor disturbance?" She forced her voice steady. "Deputy Director, I've reviewed the incident report. It appears to be a low-level neighborhood dispute. Hardly a federal matter." The pause on the other end was ice cold. Then Anderson said words that dropped like lead into the room. "Commander, I need you to pull the personnel file for Officer Derek Williams immediately. And not the amended report. The original one. The one that includes the assault he left out." Hayes blinked. "The amended version?" She felt the chill creep into her chest. She had approved the report herself just hours earlier. Had she missed something? Anderson's voice cut sharper. "Let me make this clear. The civilian your officer assaulted yesterday, her name is Special Agent Maya Johnson. 12 years FBI Civil Rights Division. She's been embedded undercover in your district for the past 3 weeks, documenting systemic violations. And yesterday, your officer provided her with the final piece of evidence we needed." The phone nearly slipped from Hayes' hand. Around her, the precinct hummed with routine, officers typing reports, phones ringing, laughter in the break room. But in her office, the air froze. "I'm sorry, could you repeat that?" She stammered. "There's no misunderstanding, Commander," Anderson replied. "Your officer slapped a federal agent in front of multiple witnesses, in uniform, while she was conducting official surveillance. That's a federal crime. Assaulting a sworn federal officer under color of law." Hayes gripped her desk, breath shallow. She pictured William's swagger, his dismissive grin, the countless complaints that had crossed her desk with his name attached. And now this. Her voice dropped, almost a whisper. "Dear God." Anderson wasn't finished. "Special Agent Johnson has 3 weeks of documented surveillance, 17 separate incidents, each showing constitutional violations. She has audio, video, witness interviews, and now, an assault committed on her personally. Your department didn't just fail oversight, Commander. You enabled a predator. And the FBI will be moving forward with charges." Hayes felt her career unraveling in real time. She struggled to find words. Deputy Director, if there's anything we can, no, Anderson interrupted. There isn't. You'll be hearing from federal prosecutors. In the meantime, inform your officer that his badge is no longer protection. He is now the subject of an active federal investigation. The line clicked dead for a long moment. Hayes sat frozen, coffee cooling beside her. The glowing report on her screen mocking her with its omissions. She whispered to herself, "What have we done?" Minutes later, she made the call. "Williams, my office. Bring your partner with you. Now." 20 minutes later, Derek Williams swaggered into her office, uniform pressed, smirk plastered on his face. Maria Rodriguez trailed behind him, pale and silent. "Commander," Williams began, dropping into a chair without being asked, "if this is about that park thing, I already filed the report. Rodriguez can back me up." Civilian was non-compliant, situation escalated slightly, but shut up, Derek. Hayes' voice sliced through his rehearsed excuses, his smirk faltered. "Excuse me?" Hayes leaned forward, eyes like steel. "The woman you assaulted yesterday? She isn't just some civilian. She is Special Agent Maya Johnson. FBI. Civil Rights Division. And you didn't just slap a mother in front of her daughter. You assaulted a federal agent in the line of duty." The silence in the room stretched like wire pulled taut. Rodriguez gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Williams' face went slack, disbelief flashing across his features before curdling into panic. That's impossible," he muttered. "She was some welfare mom." Hayes slammed her hand on the desk. "She was building a case against you for 3 weeks. 17 families. 47 complaints. And now? Video evidence of you assaulting her in broad daylight. Do you have any idea what you've done?" Rodriguez whispered, "Oh my God. Derek, this is the end." Williams' mouth opened, closed, his arrogance crumbling. "She tricked me. She set me up." "No," Hayes snapped. "You set yourself up. You thought you were untouchable. Now the FBI, the DOJ, the entire country is watching your face on every screen. You're finished." For the first time in years, Derek Williams didn't have a comeback. He sat in silence, the weight of his collapsed invincibility pressing him into his chair. At the same hour. 6 blocks away, Maya sat across from Anderson in the FBI field office. Her cheek still bearing the faint bruise. The casual park mother persona was gone. In its place was the crisp suit, the steady voice. The federal agent who had spent 12 years fighting for civil rights. "Ma'am," Maya said, sliding a thick file across the table, "I recommend we move to phase 2 immediately. Between the documented surveillance and yesterday's assault, we have everything we need for federal prosecution." Anderson opened the file, flipping through photographs, transcripts, and audio logs. The evidence was devastating: Williams barking threats, children crying, parents pleading. The assault video sat on top, a red handprint visible on Maya's cheek. Anderson looked up, voice low but resolute. "Agent Johnson, this changes everything. You're no longer just the investigator. You're the victim. And now, it's personal." Maya's eyes burned with quiet fire. "Good. Because it's personal for every family he silenced. And now, none of them will be silenced again. One lawsuit can expose an entire system." The morning after the slap, while Chicago buzzed with shock and outrage, a different kind of battle began to form, not on playground benches or social media feeds, but in the polished conference rooms of the city's federal courthouse. Civil rights attorneys had seen the videos, read the comments, spoken to witnesses, and they knew, this was bigger than Derek Williams. This was about a system that had protected him for years. Jennifer Kim, senior attorney with the ACLU's Chicago office, spread a stack of reports across the table for her team. "This is it," she said, her voice steady with resolve. "This isn't just assault. This is 47 complaints buried by the department. This is institutional failure. We're filing a class action, not just for Maya Johnson, but for every family this officer terrorized." Her paralegal, Marcus Thompson, had spent the entire night compiling evidence from social media. Screenshots of Facebook posts, threads of Twitter testimonies, videos uploaded by families who had previously been ignored. He pushed the binder forward. "We have 17 families willing to stand as plaintiffs. Each one with stories that mirror Maya's documentation. Same officer. Same tactics. Same result." Kim flipped through the binder, her eyes narrowing as she read. The Rodriguez family, grandson removed from playground equipment despite no violations. The Hernandez family, forced to leave soccer field under false noise complaints. The Johnson family, father questioned about his relationship to his son. Demanded ID. The Santos family, threatened with CPS after asking for a supervisor's name. Each case was a thread. And together, they wove a damning tapestry of systemic discrimination. "This isn't just about Derek Williams," Kim said, pressing her palm flat on the table. "This is about CPD leadership. About Commander Hayes signing off on reports she knew were sanitized. About administrators who buried complaints. This lawsuit will name them all. That same afternoon, the families gathered at a local community center, their faces tense with a mix of anger, fear, and hope. Maya Johnson walked into the room, no longer undercover, no longer pretending to be just another parent on the bench. She introduced herself formally, her FBI credentials clipped to her blazer. "I was undercover for 3 weeks," she said, her voice steady, her cheeks still bruised. "I documented 17 separate incidents. But what I saw only scratches the surface. You all lived it. You filed the complaints. And you were ignored. This lawsuit is your voice. Together, we will make sure the system finally listens." Mrs. Rodriguez, holding her grandson Miguel's hand, spoke first. Her voice shook, but her words carried decades of resignation and resilience. "I stopped complaining because nothing changed. But this time, if we're together, maybe it will." Carlos Hernandez leaned forward, anger flashing in his eyes. "I've explained to my kids why police should protect them. Do you know how hard it is to answer when they ask why an officer made us leave a park we paid for with our taxes? Enough is enough. Count us in." Jerome Johnson, his son Marcus sitting beside him, added quietly, "My boy used to love Sunday basketball. Now he asks if the mean policeman will be there. He shouldn't be afraid of a badge. He should trust it. I'll testify." Maya listened, heart heavy but proud. For 3 weeks, she had carried the weight of documenting these stories. Now, the families were carrying it with her. The next morning, the lawsuit was filed in federal court. The case title read, Rodriguez et al. V. City of Chicago, Derek Williams. And Commander Patricia Hayes. The charges were sweeping. Systematic violation of constitutional rights, racial discrimination in public facilities, institutional indifference to citizen complaints, failure to provide equal protection under the law. The complaint included harrowing details. Miguel Rodriguez asking why he couldn't play on the climbing bars. The Hernandez children confused about being told they were too loud, while white children screamed louder. Marcus Johnson asking if his father really was his father after being asked for ID. Each story personalized the systemic pattern. Each story was undeniable. The remedies sought weren't just financial compensation. They demanded institutional reform, federal oversight of complaint review, mandatory civil rights training for all CPD officers, civilian oversight boards with authority to discipline, external audits of every discrimination-related complaint filed in the past 5 years. Kim stood on the courthouse steps after filing, flanked by the 17 families. Cameras flashed. Reporters shoved microphones forward. Her voice was firm, her message uncompromising. "This isn't about one slap," she said. "This is about years of abuse, hidden behind bureaucracy. This is about children learning to fear police officers instead of trusting them. This is about families silenced because their voices weren't considered important enough." Today, that ends. Today, these families demand justice, not just for themselves, but for every family in Chicago. Behind her, the family stood in quiet solidarity. Mrs. Rodriguez squeezed Miguel's hand. Carlos Hernandez placed his hand on his son's shoulder. Jerome Johnson wrapped his arm around Marcus. They weren't just names on paper anymore. They were living proof of systemic failure. The city's response came swiftly. Corporation Counsel Ana Valencia issued a carefully worded statement. "The city of Chicago takes all allegations seriously. While we dispute claims of systemic discrimination, we are committed to ongoing training, accountability, and oversight." But the words rang hollow against the roar of social media. Within hours, hashtags like #JusticeForMaya, #FamiliesUnited, and #ReformNow were trending. Activists amplified the lawsuit, demanding real change. Politicians were forced to comment. The mayor's office was flooded with calls, and in the midst of it all, Derek Williams sat in silence, his world collapsing. No longer the swaggering officer patrolling Riverside Park. He was now the face of a national scandal, his smirk replayed endlessly across every screen. His slap dissected frame by millions. For Maya, the moment was bittersweet. The lawsuit was progress, yes. But as she sat at her desk in the FBI field office, reviewing evidence files and preparing witness statements, she knew the battle wasn't over. Lawsuits could drag. Institutions could stall. But one truth was undeniable. The silence had been broken, and once broken, it could never be restored. Some trials don't just judge a man. They judge a system. The federal courthouse in downtown Chicago buzzed with a tension that felt more like history than procedure. The line of people snaked down the steps, families clutching complaint files, activists holding signs, reporters jostling for the best angle. Inside, marble floors echoed with hurried footsteps, and the air carried the weight of something bigger than one officer's misconduct. Courtroom 302 overflowed. Every bench was filled, journalists with notepads, parents with folded arms, students live streaming on their phones. At the front, under the gleaming seal of the United States District Court, sat Judge Rebecca Lang, her eyes sharp, her posture unyielding. United States versus Derek Williams. The clerk announced Williams entered in a pressed suit, but the swagger was gone. His jaw was tight, his eyes darting, his once arrogant shoulders slumped. To the public, he looked small, not the looming officer of Riverside Park, but a man stripped of the badge he had once wielded like a weapon. At the prosecution table sat Assistant U.S. Attorney Daniel Reed, files stacked in meticulous order. At the defense table, Williams' lawyer whispered furiously in his ear. And behind the bar, flanked by civil rights attorneys and community members, sat Maya Johnson. The bruise on her cheek had faded, but the memory of the slap still burned in every heart present. The opening statements began. Reed rose first, his voice steady and deliberate. This case is not about a single moment of violence. This case is about a pattern. A pattern of intimidation, humiliation, and discrimination carried out under color of law. Officer Derek Williams didn't just slap a mother in a park. He assaulted a federal agent, Special Agent Maya Johnson, who was undercover documenting systemic abuse ignored by his department. He thought he was silencing her. Instead, he exposed himself. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Reed continued, his words slicing through the air. For years, families filed complaints. 47 times, those complaints were buried. 17 families will testify. We will show you their stories, their pain, and the officer's own words, captured on video, recorded on audio, documented in black and white. This is not an isolated incident. This is a culture of impunity. And today, that culture is on trial. The defense tried to strike back. Williams' attorney, Mark Callahan, paced with forced confidence. Ladies and gentlemen, let's be clear. My client was an officer maintaining order. Parks can be chaotic. Children unsupervised. Parents distracted. Officer Williams acted with the best intentions. The so-called assault was nothing more than an accident, taken out of context by edited videos and emotional interpretations. But his words faltered against the weight of the evidence. Everyone in that room had seen the videos. Everyone had heard Williams sneer, "You people need to understand." Then came the witnesses. Mrs. Rodriguez took the stand first, her grandson Miguel sitting in the gallery clutching a toy car. Her voice trembled but grew stronger with every word. He told me my grandson couldn't use the equipment. He made us feel like we didn't belong. Miguel cried all the way home. I complained. Nothing happened. Carlos Hernandez followed, anger flashing in his eyes. My kids were playing soccer on the soccer field. He said they were too loud. He threatened CPS. We left because we were scared. But my kids still ask why they can't play in the park. Jerome Johnson testified about being asked to prove his son was his son. His voice broke as he said, "My boy asked me if I was really his father. Do you know what it does to a child to doubt something so sacred?" Each testimony was like a hammer striking the defense's crumbling wall. 17 families. 17 stories. Each one connected by a common thread. Derek Williams. Then Maya took the stand. The courtroom fell silent as she adjusted the microphone, her FBI badge clipped to her blazer. Her voice was calm, steady, unshaken. For 3 weeks, I was undercover as a mother in Riverside Park. I documented 17 incidents of discrimination. I recorded his words, his threats, his patterns. On the final day, he slapped me across the face in front of my daughter and dozens of witnesses. I did not escalate. I did not provoke. I simply sat on a bench. And he hit me. Reed approached with a screen. Agent Johnson, I'd like to enter Exhibit 12, the wide-angle footage from the park. The video played. The room held its breath. The slap echoed once again, replayed in crisp, undeniable clarity. Zara's cry pierced the silence. Williams' sneer filled the speakers. And Maya's calm voice naming his badge number carried like thunder. When the video ended, Judge Lang's gavel struck for silence. The defense attorney shifted uncomfortably. Williams stared at the table, his face drained of color. Reed turned back to Maya. Agent Johnson, what was your daughter's reaction? Maya's eyes softened, but her voice didn't waver. She asked me why a policeman hurt her mother. I had no answer that could make sense to a child. The silence that followed was more powerful than any speech. By the trial's second week, the case was no longer just about Williams. Civil rights attorneys filed motions to expand the lawsuit into a consent decree against the Chicago Police Department itself. Judge Lang listened carefully as Jennifer Kim argued, this isn't just about punishing one man. It's about reforming a department that ignored 47 complaints. The families don't just want compensation. They want change. The judge leaned forward, eyes narrowing. If evidence shows systemic neglect, this court is prepared to impose federal oversight. It was a moment that shook CPD leadership to its core. No longer could they hide behind paperwork or bureaucracy. The very system was being weighed at. In the gallery, families held hands. Activists scribbled notes. Reporters whispered about the Chicago Consent Decree 2.0. And outside the courthouse, crowds gathered with signs, "Protect families, not predators. Justice for Maya. Justice for all." Williams' lawyer tried one last desperate defense, painting him as a dedicated officer under pressure. But it collapsed under the mountain of evidence. When cross-examined, even Rodriguez, his partner, admitted, voice breaking, "I warned him to stop. He didn't listen." By the closing arguments, the trial had become more than prosecution. It was a reckoning. Reed's final words echoed like a verdict before the gavel fell. This case is about a man who thought his badge made him invincible. But it's also about a system that let him believe that. Today, this court has the power to tell every child in Chicago that the law belongs to them too. Maya sat silently, Zara's small hand in hers, knowing the fight wasn't just hers anymore. The gavel struck. The trial wasn't over, but the truth was undeniable. Derek Williams wasn't just on trial. The Chicago Police Department was, too, and for the first time in years. Justice felt possible. Some verdicts echo louder than the gavel. The air inside courtroom 302 felt electric on the morning the jury returned. Every seat was filled, reporters, activists, parents, children clutching handmade signs. Outside, the courthouse steps had become a protest ground, chants rolling through downtown Chicago, "Justice for Maya. Justice for the families." Maya sat near the front, Zara on her lap, the child's arms looped tightly around her neck. The bruise on her cheek had faded, but the memory of that slap lived in every whisper of the crowd, every click of a camera, every raised fist outside the courthouse. The clerk rose. In the matter of United States versus Derek Williams, on the charge of assaulting a federal officer under color of law, we find the defendant guilty. The word rippled through the room like a storm breaking. Gasps. Cries. Applause that Judge Lang's gavel barely contained. Zara whispered into her mother's ear, "He can't hurt you anymore?" And Maya nodded, kissing her forehead. "Not me, baby. Not anyone." But the verdict was just the beginning. Judge Lang leaned forward, her voice resonant and unflinching. "Officer Williams, this court finds that you not only violated the law, but you betrayed the public trust. You turned authority into a weapon. You silenced voices that cried for justice. Today, that silence ends. You are sentenced to 8 years in federal prison." Williams slumped in his chair, the last flicker of arrogance extinguished. His lawyer placed a hand on his shoulder, but it was useless. His fall was complete. The families rose together. 17 plaintiffs standing shoulder to shoulder. Their faces wet with tears but glowing with pride. Mrs. Rodriguez lifted Miguel into her arms, whispering, "We did it, Mijo. We did it." Carlos Hernandez gripped his son's hand, telling him, "This is what real justice looks like." Jerome Johnson wrapped his arm around Marcus, whispering, "No badge can take away the truth." And Maya? She stood quietly, holding Zara, letting the moment belong to the families who had endured years of silence. She had carried their voices into the courtroom, and now those voices had finally been heard, but the impact didn't stop with Derek Williams. Days later, Judge Lang issued her ruling on the civil rights class action. The city of Chicago, she declared, had failed its citizens by ignoring 47 complaints and shielding officers from accountability. The remedy was sweeping, a federal consent decree mandating independent oversight of CPD for the next 10 years, civilian review boards with the power to investigate and discipline officers, mandatory civil rights and de-escalation training for every officer in the department quarterly, public reporting on complaints and their resolutions. The reforms were historic. For the first time, the system that had buried complaints would itself be under a microscope. Mayor Elaine Porter addressed the city, her voice heavy with contrition. "This case exposed deep failures in our system. To the families who were silenced, we owe you more than words, we owe you change. Today, we begin that change." The story exploded beyond Chicago. National news outlets called it a landmark case in civil rights accountability. Activists in New York, Los Angeles, Atlanta, and Ferguson held rallies inspired by the verdict. Parents across the country shared the videos with their children, reminding them, "You are not invisible. Your voice matters." Maya became a reluctant symbol. Interview requests poured in, think pieces praised her composure, hashtags carried her name. But when asked about it, her response was always the same: "This was never about me. It was about 17 families who refused to stay silent. I was just the one who sat on the bench and wrote it down." Still, her image, standing tall in the park, naming Williams' badge number with calm precision, became iconic. A mural appeared on the south side, Maya holding Zara. The words, "Our silence is broken," painted above in bold letters. Point one evening, Weeks after the verdict, Maya returned to Riverside Park with Zara. The playground was alive again. Children climbing, laughing, shouting, without fear. Parents smiled, nodded, even clapped when they saw her. For the first time in years, the park felt like what it was always meant to be, a place of joy, not intimidation. Zara tugged her hand. Mama, can I go play now? Maya smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's face. Yes, baby. Go play. She sat on the same bench where she had once documented fear, but this time she watched hope. The wood chips beneath the swings weren't marked by trauma anymore. They were just wood chips again, and as the sun dipped low, casting golden light across the park, Maya felt the weight lift. The case was over, the fight was won, but the work continued. She knew the system wouldn't change overnight. She knew battles lay ahead. But for now, she allowed herself to breathe, because one verdict had echoed louder than the gavel, and it had said, "Justice belongs to everyone."